So I want to thank Rebecca and the Rice360 team and Zach for the technical help. You guys have been saintly in helping everyone out. And I wanted to really say what a joy it has been to be around so many amazing friends and allies and new innovators that I've never met before. It's just been an inspirational week. And so I'll start off with the inspiration part, because I know Rebecca mentioned this on day one, to try to keep inspiration as your North Star whenever you're innovating. And this photo is my own daughter, Eve. And she looked perfectly healthy when she was born, but was set to be discharged from the newborn nursery in profound heart failure. And she is only alive today because she got an early enough diagnosis of her congenital heart disease that allowed her to move on to her next pathways of care. And one of the critical tests that she had was ultrasound. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional today just because it's the anniversary of a lot of critical interventions. But it's good to have kind of this ongoing motivation in all that we're doing. So she became one of 1.3 million babies born around the world with the most common and deadly birth defect. And ultrasound is really essential to diagnosing and guiding care for any child that has any sort of pediatric heart disease, be that congenital or rheumatic. But 90% of these patients are lacking access to imaging in their local communities of care. So Bloom Standard has tried to develop a completely autonomous ultrasound image acquisition device that's a hardware and software-based solution to try to bring ultrasound and echocardiography to the front lines of care. So earlier in the patient pathway, be that at before discharge from the birth setting or in pediatric primary care as these babies are being seen for their routine carrying immunizations. And this technology kind of leverages some pretty novel core components, including a chip-based ultrasound transducer that's very forgiving for an unskilled user and allows, again, for that autonomous image capture, but then some cool machine learning and software components that allow for automated smart placement of the device for someone, could be an ASHA, an A&M, a midwife, so someone very early in the care pathway. So I wanted to include this slide because we actually developed this at the request of the Gates Foundation and Global Health Labs. And I think it's actually really helpful. It's been helpful for my team, engineers and otherwise, to think about things in this sort of technology that drives a product. And so we sort of separated this out, thinking we've got this core technology pieces that, I mean, we didn't recreate a chip for ultrasound, right? We have a core supplier for the chip-based ultrasound, but it allows us to do a lot of very interesting things that can't be done with traditional ultrasound, even as we moved into point-of-care ultrasound and smaller things. But it's driving the product development so that we can really move forward with that main mission of automating the image acquisition process, but yet having something complete that would allow unskilled users to be able to get an answer, a screening level answer, right at the point of care. It also allows us to be able to send those images very easily for expert or remote interpretation if that's available and something that can be used in some of these resource-poor settings. So the AI, as I was mentioning, has a couple components. So there's a screener mode and an expert mode, because we do indeed have some users, especially at this study phase, that have enough skill to know how to understand an ultrasound image. They've done basic POCUS training, that sort of thing. But for the unskilled user that doesn't have any experience, we don't even want them to see that image. It's going to be completely guiding you through what is ostensibly a 30-second scan. Within 30 seconds, we can do a full sweep from the aorta and the diaphragm up through the heart all the way, so we see all four chambers and the ventricles, and even to see the arch and the veins. And that's really important to me as someone who spent 10 years working on pulse oximetry screening, both here in the US and in 14 countries overseas, because we miss a lot of those kids with non-cyanotic congenital heart disease. But so we can find out structure and flow and have the app guide those next pieces. So I'm not going to play this video, even though it is truly only 30 seconds long, but it might make the whole thing crash, so I don't know how to do that. But at any rate, you can see sort of like this is our second generation, our V1 and V2 prototypes. So they've come a long way. They used to be plugged into a tablet or a phone. Now it's wireless, and it's able to just be placed down. You get a visual cue based on color that you found your image acquisition window. You can press the button to start. And then the one on the upper corner is the green light is indicating that the scan is complete. And at that point, again, you can just share the data from the app to someone else wirelessly or securely within your network, or it's giving you a clinical decision support binary yes or no. An abnormality has been detected. That child needs to be elevated for care. And I think we are hopeful that it keeps kids in their local community of care as much as it does help refer them, because there are a lot of unnecessary transports and unnecessary sort of anxieties among care teams and parents when we don't need to be doing that. So in the poster session, this is a sort of an anecdotal subset of our early data from our study in rural Mexico, in central Mexico, in Querétaro. So we looked at 62 patients, and again, pulse ox is a big deal for me, so on every one of our babies that we do a rapid scan, we're doing a same scan with a predicate in-house device, so an FDA-cleared device, and then moving on to do pulse oximetry. So this was the correlation we were trying to look for. And if you can imagine, if you did 10x, this number of patients, if you're looking at 11% having a notable assessment on ultrasound, that is a not insignificant amount of children, and then correlating that to another pulse ox value, you're able to see where you might have a change in care pathway, and indeed for a lot of our patients, this could have been a very life-threatening condition in the newborn period. Just a quick look at our regulatory pathway. We're a little bit ahead of schedule right now, at about 1,000 patients so far on our prototypes. We've just started at Mayo Clinic Platform Accelerate, so we're moving ahead with the machine learning piece merged with our own prospective data. But this is not for the faint of heart, but hang in there. You can do it, and FDA can be a good friend if you talk to them early and often. And these clinical trial sites are doing a variety of things. Those little icons show you if we're looking at cardiac, if we're looking at lung, and then the early feasibility on maternal is over there on the Mongolia side. So it's a lot of moving parts for a tiny, tiny team, but it really reinforces that partnership piece that we've talked about throughout this meeting. And then just future pathways. This is a lot on the AI side of things, but all of our algorithms are built around cardiac and lung so far, but being able to scale those into pediatric brain, that transfontanelle window we talked about earlier, and then into adult applications as well. These are our partners. Grateful for them. If we didn't have them, we would not be where we are today. A lot of them are part of the Pediatric Device Consortia program here in the United States. So you'll see those little red dots are also hospitals that are part of the PDC program, for which we've received grant funding to allow us to move to the place that we are today. So finally, I'll just say thank you. I want to recognize Dr. San Roman from Mexico. He has led our pulse oximetry work and our ultrasound imaging work in Querétaro. He also does work with PAHO, so we benefit from both sides of his brain. And then Dr. Ulzi, who's come all the way from Mongolia as a neonatologist, and she also leads the neonatal health program for the Ministry of Health, and we're all very grateful for this learning experience and being able to talk to all of you today. So thank you for letting me share.
I work across the street in cardiology, but was at Minnesota before, so I saw some of the Minnesota names. Can you talk about how you get each of the different views? Is it so that there's gel and then you hold the probe in one place and inside something is moving from window to window, or how does that work with obtaining all the different views? Thank you.
That's a great question. So in our early studies, we did do all of the traditional views that a pediatric echo tech would do. Parasternal long, parasternal short, apical 4, and subcostal, and a little bit of suprasternal. That one's kind of hard, but like a modified suprasternal. And we did that mostly to validate our hypothesis that we could find one key window that would give us the most amount of data in the quickest way, so that someone who knew what they were looking at could make a clinical decision based on that, a yes/no decision, or that the machine learning algorithms could do that. And I think we were able to validate about maybe a year and a half ago that subcostal was that magic window for us. And so there is no motion by the user. The probe is placed. In fact, here I am terribly having this like in my side pocket, but there it is. It's super tiny, and it's going to get even smaller, but this is our 8th device. So it's gotten, it's changing as we deal with the boards and the internals and all of that. But that little bellow you see on the bottom is what allows this mechanical sweep so that the user has to do nothing other than place it and press start, and then they're told when the sweep is through. So by doing subcostal, it gives you what I said it gives you, which is 4 chambers, the ventricles, and all the way up through the arch and the veins. And it's not going to be like a 40-minute echo study that your patients get or that my daughter gets every time she goes in. It is a screen in the truest sense of the word, but it's giving us really good information. Okay.
Thank you. This is very impressive, I must say. I've only 2 questions. One of them is like, can you give us an indication maybe of like the kind of accuracy that it has in reference to the gold standard, whatever that would be? And I know it's still very early. If you have any indication as to what kind of cost you'd be looking at eventually that you would market, whether it would be accessible to people from all parts of the world.
Yeah. Well, we designed the device from the ground up with low and middle income countries in mind. We submitted to the WHO compendium actually before we even had our functional prototype, because they allow you to do that if you're far enough along in proof of concept. But that said, it's certainly a challenge to get it to where you want it to be from a target product profile and target price point. Our target price point for low and middle income countries is sub $1,000 at market entry. Not easy, but doable. And I think we can, with Gates Foundation and Global Health Labs and other partners, just finding every possible opportunity to streamline and make even the early runs of manufacturing tenable for ministries of health to be able to purchase and deploy. I think at scale, we can get it down under 500. I really believe that. So, but for the US users and the European users, it's a slightly different model. It's the same tech, but there's a few more like software features and bells and whistles that are tenable here. Your first question was
It's about accuracy.
Oh, accuracy, right. So, like we said, everything we've done from the very beginning in clinical study sites has been compared against gold standard. We knew we were going to get asked for that for FDA. So we even submitted that data on the first 100 patients to FDA for our breakthrough device designation. So when we received breakthrough, we weren't quite sure how much more data FDA was going to ask us for the 510K on the hardware. But as it stands, resolution and quality at the depth and frequency you need for newborn and infant is substantially equivalent to gold standard.
For the talk, I work on ultrasound, and I think this is fantastic, and I know all the challenges that you must have gone through. A quick question is, when you place a device on, like not a sonographer, for a typical user in low middle income settings, sometimes the placement is and the angle of your device is quite important to get those sweeps.
Yes.
Are there any machine learning algorithms or algorithms to tell the user if the device is not sweeping well, or are you just getting any scans from wherever the user is placing?
Mm-hmm. There's nothing that's going to tell if the device isn't sweeping well, but we do have the algorithms that tell you whether you have your starting window. And from your starting window, the sweep is fully autonomous. And I mean, that's just a function of how much data consistently you fed into your algorithm to get it right. Like, how far does it need to go? When is the right point for it to stop? And for our model builders, they've, sort of picked. I wish I could have played the video for you, because you could see right on the screen of the tablet, because this was in Dr. Ullsley's hospital, when you're sweeping through, when you can easily see that 4-chamber, you've hit it, it's the beating heart. But I think there's 2 things for unskilled users, is that we can use physical markers, right? The nipples and the belly button are actually, it's quite easy to sort of get close just with that sort of training. Like I have to put an iRhythm EKG patch on my kid every year to monitor, you know what I mean, for her SVT. And they don't even do that in the hospital. They just send it home with me with basic instructions on like, this is how you place it, here's the nipple. So we wanted that level of ease of use for those users. So I think we're feeling pretty good right now, but the next bit of user feedback will say whether we need to adjust some things in the algorithm to make sure that they know if it's not right, whether they move up, down, left, or right to get the starting point, because that's the key. If you have the starting point, the sweep is consistent.